And welcome back to Jeff Koinange Live here at Citizen Television. We're talking to Ambassador Martin Kimani. He's our man in New York, made that the United Nations Security Council. Kenya is a non-permanent member since January 2021, so last 6-7 months, and we'll be there for the next year and a half and change. We're talking about regional issues and global issues. And a really good friend of mine called Fred Arunga, he's just sent me, he hardly ever sends me messages, right? He says, this guy's impressive. These are the types of guys who should be running this place.
That guy sounds like my relative.
Okay, but listen, we just came back literally from South Sudan.
Yeah.
We went in and we covered the 10th anniversary. I had an interview with the president, and he was telling us, and he talked about the United Nations Security Council. He says, look, my country has embargoes against it. My country has sanctions against it. He was literally begging, I need sanctions lifted against my country.
We think so too. We think so too. South Sudan has gone through a very rough patch, and Kenya and the region has been very responsive. President Kenyatta, from just my last count, I think had at least 12 summits where he met other heads of state and government over this issue. He was on the phone countless times. He was fighting to release political prisoners there, to forge talks, engaging his leaders. So Kenya has been in it, and we think that they're doing much better than they were. They formed a government, the two conflicting sides, and they're making steps. Not very fast, but clear steps of improvement. So when the mandate of their sanctions came up for renewal, we were on the council. This was just a couple of months ago. And the other countries, the majority of other countries, said, let's renew the sanctions. We fought that. Then there were about 10 categories of sanctions. Kenya reduced them to 5. We fought for them to take 50% off, which they did. We then fought for the other 5, for there to be language in that renewal that would open the path for them being lifted. Then after that, we had to vote. We had to vote for the sanctions renewal. And Kenya abstained from that vote, together with India. All the other countries voted for that extension. So I think Kenya made a strong statement. We made it easier on South Sudan. And the next time around, we want the sanctions lifted. And that's a position of the African Union. It's a position of IGAD. And I think we will succeed. Of course, the South Sudanese have work to do. They've got to make progress. They've got to hit their benchmarks. To get out of the Security Council, to get in is easy because you're in trouble. And a lot of the countries in the council, they like grabbing you and putting you inside. To get out is hard, right? And there are too many African files that are sort of just hanging around the council. And so we want South Sudan to get out, but they need to do something. And what we said is, when you do your part, Kenya will fight to get those sanctions lifted.
Do you feel a little helpless despite your case? You put the case against, but then you have 13 or whatever it is the vote is against. Does it make you feel a little helpless?
No, it doesn't. Well, first of all, I'll have to say the African members who even voted for the sanctions to be renewed were very much with us to fight for the reduction. So the fact that we were able to cut their sanctions by 50% tells me that we're not in a helpless situation. We can get it done.
Yeah.
And President Salva should take heart.
He's probably watching you. He's probably smiling right now, finally. From South Sudan, let's go to Ethiopia. Recently held elections, although one part of the country, Tigray, was completely cut off. I mean, for lack of a better word, Balozi, Ethiopia's a mess.
Ethiopia clearly has a lot of problems. This issue, it's very important to distinguish there are two categories of situations. There are situations that have a clear threat to international peace and security. That's a mandate of the Security Council. Then you have internal problems. And that, strictly speaking, is not the mandate of the Council. However, your internal problems could lead to global problems, right? So for instance, if you have a war in your country that produces 1 million refugees, or a war in your country that sucks in other countries. So the Security Council started to express a lot of concern and started having a number of private meetings on this issue. And this culminated in an open meeting where the Ethiopian government sent its representatives to explain what was going on. And all of us had to take a position. The Africa 3+1 took the position that, one, we need humanitarian aid to be delivered in an unhindered way. Two, that election that you put in quotes, I don't think we should put it in quotes, because it may not be the best, but it's an expression of a democratic aspiration. And we said the people of Ethiopia want democracy. Let's give them time to have their election. Then we encouraged them, use that election as the beginning of a national dialogue. And then the government had announced a ceasefire. And the A3+1 said, okay, that's good. Now, what we need is everybody to observe the ceasefire. And then we urge you. We urge them. We said, the African Union is in Addis Ababa. That's where we've built our continental peace and security architecture. We have tools, we have skills, we have processes. And Ethiopia was such an important country in building those. And so we said, make use of the tools that we've built as a continent. So the concern continues in the Security Council. Our position as the Africa 3+1 is we really urgently urge Ethiopians to use their friends to reach out to the African Union, to reach out to your neighbors, because we've all had trouble. And sometimes when your house is burning, you can put out the fire for sure. But let me tell you, where I grew up, you try and get your neighbors to help you.
Yeah.
And they help you because they know if your house is burning, theirs could burn too. And so Ethiopia has a lot of problems. Ethiopia has had a lot of suffering. A lot of innocent people have suffered. A lot of humanitarian crises is going on. There's conflict still going on. But what we want, and we think the region can handle this. We think we have the ability. We think we have the tools. We're just waiting for that call. And Kenya, the region, Africa will respond. And it's really important, because when you get others to respond who are not your neighbors, they may respond in ways that don't understand your problems. Their response could become part of the problem. So
yeah, but when you say you're waiting for that call, and experts or critics are saying, look, millions of people are threatened with starvation. Millions. What's it going to take? You know the region, Addis Ababa is the headquarters of the whole African Union. And yet, right there, it's brewing. You can see it, eyes wide open, you can see something brewing. That's not going to end well.
Well, it's already not well, because there have been a lot of innocents who have suffered. And I feel terrible and offer my condolences, and Kenya does that. What we have to do is, Ethiopia is a country of 100 million people. Ethiopia is dealing with the same issues Kenya is dealing with. How do we manage our diversity? How do we manage these constructs, these nation states that are still in the process of being made? And do that while trying to get richer so that our people can be better off. so that they cannot be profiled based on their ethnicity, so that political entrepreneurs who use ethnicity as a way to divide and rule can have had their day. So we have to be very careful. The A3+1 said we need to handle this matter carefully, because the fact that millions of people are threatened with famine means that if you get it wrong, that number will increase even more. The number of refugees out of Ethiopia will increase exponentially. So we think it's not too late. We think a ceasefire was put on the table. We think it needs to spread. We think people need to cease their hostilities. We think there needs to be a national dialogue on the table, a genuine, inclusive national dialogue. We've seen it before, and we've done it before. I'll remind you that Ethiopia has done this before. In 1991, after a long period of civil war, they had a national dialogue. And that national dialogue delivered to them, many of them may not be happy with how it ended, but it delivered to them 30 years of peace, rapid economic development, and a starring role on the global stage as a country that was one of the anchors for peace and security in our region. If that national dialogue gave them that 30 years, well, it's time for another one.
Yeah, 1991, 2021, you're right, 30 years.
Yeah.
You hopeful when you see them? Are they listening?
I'm hoping they're listening. I'm hoping that those who are watching this show are listening. I'm hoping that our president is very engaged on the issue, has reached out his hand. Our government is reaching out its hand. Ethiopia's peace is Kenya's peace. This country, from the time of Emperor Haile Selassie and President Jomo Kenyatta, hand in hand, Haile Selassie was supporting Mau Mau. Haile Selassie was fighting against apartheid. Ethiopia is a jewel of Africa. Ethiopia is a proud, strong country. Ethiopia has existed since antiquity as an independent country. If they can't pull it off, who can? They just need to remember who they are, you know?
Yeah.
And once they do, reach out for some help. One can't be too proud or too stubborn to reach out for help when you need it. Kenya has had trouble. We've reached out for help.
That's right. And I was about to ask you, I mean, does that frustrate you sometimes in your job? Because you look around at the potential of the continent, potential of this region, and then you say, look, you know, why do we do this to ourselves? Does that frustrate you sometimes?
What frustrates me is the image our troubles paint in our own minds and in the minds of others. So many people are convinced that Africa cannot take care of its own problems. So many people think that we're just a hopeless basket case of war and hunger. And they don't see the incredible engine that is accelerating on this continent. And I wish they saw that more. And I wish we saw ourselves more clearly and are not just defined by the huge problems that some countries are in.
Yeah.
So it is frustrating, yeah.
You know, I was living in Nigeria a while back when President Obasanjo then, Olusegun Obasanjo, used to use this phrase a lot: African solutions to African problems.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Now this phrase, you know, there's some who see it and roll their eyes and say it's just a cliche. It's just one more cliche. But it's a profound, profound statement, because your problems are your wealth. You suffer them, but when you solve them, you create a much better life for yourself. Every single product that is sold is trying to take care of a problem. Our problems, we have to own them, because solving them is what makes us what we can be. So Africa's solutions for African problems means Africa's wealth for Africa. It means Africa's peace for Africa. It's grabbing, it's owning and being independent. It's saying to those who believe we're a basket case that no, it's my problem. I caused it. There could have been other factors that fed into, but ultimately I take responsibility. And I think that's how we carry ourselves here in Kenya. I think that's how Kenya carries itself. It may not come across a lot in when people are talking, but that's what we've said. We're independent. Our problems are ours. We have the solutions. Yeah. So it's a profound statement, and I think every African should embrace it.
And until we're able to own that, whether it's the mistake or we own the success, until we're able to do that, we're not going to get anywhere, are we?
No. Yeah. The world shall stay unequal. Africa shall stay vulnerable to the forces that seek to divide, exploit us. Our children shall not have jobs. Our sense of cohesion and peace shall be forever weak. But the moment we understand that we are independent and we understand that we're not a young place, Africans were building governments when other people lived in caves. We've just had a short period of trouble. And that short period of trouble doesn't have to be permanent. And I think that's what we're doing in the Security Council. I think that's what Kenya is about. I think that's what our constitution is about. I think that's what our government is striving to do. I think President Kenyatta, who's a famous Pan-Africanist, that's what he gets up wanting to do and trying to do.
Yeah.
So I feel hopeful about the future, but we have to own it.
You were talking about COVID a moment ago, Balozi. Has COVID been the major equalizer here, like the great equalizer, do you think?
Initially, I thought so, but not anymore. Not anymore. I think COVID has been more than an equalizer, has been a revealer of certain truths. For example, we've understood today that there are countries in the world that can print tens of trillions of dollars and essentially defy the law of economics as we understand it. Every country is having a tough time economically. Every part of the world is hurting. Kenyans are hurting, but everyone is hurting. Jobs are being lost, businesses, just because of dealing with this disease. Yeah. And we've learned, one, that we need to be manufacturers. Will we, the next COVID that comes, will we wait again for someone to invent the vaccine, for someone to manufacture it? No, we have to do it. We've learned if we don't industrialize, we can be in great danger. We've learned that you can be put in the back of the line even though your dollar is as good as anyone else's. Right? So COVID has revealed the structure of the world. Now it is for us to do something with that knowledge and not accept going back to not just a tired status quo, but a very dangerous status quo towards African life.
Yeah, absolutely. Balozi, we're going to go to the magic wall because there's a lot of tweets coming in very thick and very fast. Kachola here says the United Nations Security Council has lowered the guard on the responsibility to protect the Rohingyas, now Tigray. Who shall the people of the world look up to?
We all have a responsibility to protect. That is what we're supposed to do in the Security Council. But Jeff, the responsibility to protect also has to be watched carefully because there are countries that have used that responsibility to protect as an opportunity to intervene, divide, and even destroy thriving countries.
There's a gentleman called BMJ. He's from Atlanta. He watches you. He's watching actually live from Atlanta. He says, our competition, or rather, to get on the Security Council, we had to go up against Djibouti, right? He's asking, are we friends now with Djibouti? Are we? Is all that over and done with? Or is
the first thing that Kenya did after we joined the council was to reach out to Djibouti. One of the first meetings I had in New York was with my Djibouti counterpart, and I told him, hey man, you ran for this seat. You must have wanted to do something with it. Tell me. I'll do it. I'll do it. Tell me what you need, and I'll do it. Because to have fought that hard, they had to have had a sense that this for their country was a must win. We were the official AU candidate, but they still, went for it. So we've reached out and we have very friendly relations. Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Engineer Lazaro says, will Kenya be the part of global decision-making organ or just Security Council member without veto powers?
Well, Lazaro, we are a part of the global decision-making process. We don't have veto powers, the formal veto powers, but we have a form of veto, and that veto is a moral veto. When Africa does not stand with you on the council, increasingly you're reluctant to stand against Africa for the countries that have veto power. And so when Africans are united, you may not have the veto power in the Charter of the United Nations, but you have a form of moral and political veto power.
Okay. I am the Paul says, ask Ambassador Kimani, does he think we are now diplomatically stronger than we were before the non-permanent UNSC seat? If yes, what are the gains?
I've explained some of that. Yes, we're diplomatically stronger. It means that any decision at the top world body on global peace and security, Kenya's thinking, Kenya's interests, Africa's interests have to be taken into account. And that is leading us to help build a safer region. Our region is fragile, but I think our effort is going to make it more stable. And what many Kenyans want to know is, okay, so what if it's stable? What about me? What about my life? Well, that's where our trade goes. That's where our jobs will be. There are Kenyans teaching in Somalia. There are Kenyans teaching in the DRC. And the more stable and peaceful those countries are, the more these young people with fantastic educations can get out there and show what they have.
Good point. Jacob Bubera says, happy to see Balozi Kimani. My question to him, what is the position of Kenya on humanitarian security instability in Papua New Guinea? Wow. With over 850 languages, knowing Australia has been hostile to those seeking asylum. Papua New Guinea.
That is such a specific question. I have no answer for Jacob.
Papua New Guinea. Wow, what are the chances? Thank you for the guest today. I'm interested in what's the position on ongoing conflict in Ethiopia. You explained it, actually. Yeah, you explained that. Thank you. And when Joy says, wow, Kenya scaling the heights of security and peace stability globally. Things we love to see. At least we get to represent Africa as a continent, even if it's not a non-permanent position. Do you feel you have a voice out there as a non-permanent? Do you think they listen to you?
They do.
They do.
They do, Jeff. They do. They do. Kenya's voice is heard. And Kenya's voice is very specific. It's not just a cry in the wilderness. Kenya's voice represents 50 years of peace diplomacy. It represents understanding how you help countries come together. Somalia today, their government was first, they did their negotiations with our government just down the street. And the Kenyan taxpayer invested in that because we knew that state collapse in Somalia was not working for Kenya. South Sudan, the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, that made South Sudan an independent country. So much of it was negotiated here with Kenyan mediators. So that's our voice. So when we speak, it's not just voicing an opinion. It's that they know behind that opinion there's experience, there's an orientation, and we're also very much an honest broker. So our voice is a voice of reason, a voice of mediation, and it's a necessary voice.
Good to know. Good to know. Kotete Rashid says, so inspiring and sufficiently refreshing listening to Ambassador Kimani. Very informative, knowledgeable diplomat. Hongera Balozi. All right. Thanks, Rashid, for that. A couple of SMSs. Kamau says, the date I got for the appointment was June next year. Can you imagine you make a petition in June and get an appointment next year? My passport is expired, so I have to present myself to DC and take fingerprints and what's the question here?
Tell Kamau, get on my Twitter feed, send me a message, a DM, and I'll get somebody from our DC mission to respond.
Yeah?
You know, because of COVID,
Yes.
because of COVID, a lot of our consulate services, just like other countries, it's harder to be in a packed office. So some of that has led to some delays, but there's a very responsive mission in Washington. So send me a DM, I'll respond.
Kamau, are you listening? Send Balozi a DM, he'll respond to you. Well done. Mercy says, my problem is the passport renewal and ID issues. I made an appointment to get a new passport on the e-citizen portal. Some say they have forgotten their e-citizen password here in the US.
I think you referred to David Gasheru before.
I did.
Who's our deputy ambassador?
Yes.
Our deputy ambassador in Washington
DC, yes.
under Ambassador Amayo. I hope David is on, and I hope they put something on their website responding to Mercy.
I like that. That's very diplomatic of you, Balozi. Very diplomatic. Bottom line, moving forward, it was good to be back on the non-permanent Security Council seat.
I think first we should call it elected seat.
Elected, I like that. Okay.
No, it's more powerful than non-permanent. Non-permanent is the little rigging that was done in the 1940s.
Right.
Elected is the political will of the global community saying, Kenya, go in there, hang out with those permanent guys, and make sure they deliver the goods.
And it's not intimidating being in that company, yeah? I mean, come on, let's face it. It's not intimidating sometimes.
It's not intimidating when you're sent by your country. If I was not sent, if I was just me, I'd be very intimidated. But I was sent by Kenya. What's to be intimidated about?
And if someone was asking you, are you holding your own? Are you able to hold your own?
We think so. I have a brilliant team of young and diplomats with a mix of very experienced diplomats. I have two deputies at the ambassador level, Ambassador Mike Kiboino, formidable brain. I have young diplomats in their 20s and 30s. They barely sleep. They hold their own.
Yeah.
They hold their own in terms of knowledge, in terms of shaping our agenda. My job is usually the easiest because the team has teed up the shot. My job is just to shoot the ball a bit politically, to work very closely with our ministry, with Macharia, P.S. Macharia, who's your friend.
Good friend, yes.
And Ambassador Omamo, the CS, and at the bottom is the president. Because what happens sometimes, Jeff, on the Security Council, is when you have a very bold voice, some of those countries, they go behind you to your capital, and they say, there's this guy you sent here who's out of control. Did you send him to say those things and to take those positions? And if you don't have a unified foreign policy establishment, you can be sold down the river. Someone will say, no, we didn't send him to say that stuff. He's acting on his own. And there have been ambassadors of the Security Council who've had tremendous levels of stress, some perhaps even fatal. But in Kenya, President Kenyatta's team is so clear. So when I speak, if you check with any of them, they'll say he is articulating our position. And that makes you able to be very bold, because you know your boldness is not a personal thing. It's reflecting your country. And you know how urgently Kenyans want a bold government.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff. By the way, you know Dennis Chebetwe?
Yes.
He says a very big hello.
Well, hello, Dennis. Hello, Dennis.
Balozi, good to see you as always, man.
Thank you so much.
Well done.
Thank you.
You've actually opened up our eyes a lot about what you guys do over there. Looks like some plus job, nice corner office somewhere overlooking Manhattan and East River. It's tough work, huh?
No, it's not all wine and cocktails. It's a lot of work, and we welcome you to come to New York, shoot one JKLive.
We did one last year. I remember, I don't know if you had not arrived.
No, I hadn't arrived.
With Ambassador Monica Juma.
Yeah.
Right there at the United Nations.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. At the Wangari Maathai Gardens.
Come back.
Going to take your word for it.
Okay.
Thanks, Balozi.
Thank you.
All the
Jeff.
very best.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Ambassador Martin Kimani there. He's our man in New York City, the elected position. The United Nations Security Council. I love it. And I hope you learned as much as we did over here, folks, because that's what JKL is all about. Thanks so much for being a part of JKL, folks. Every Wednesday, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thanks. Oh, by the way, Mwenda Njoka, another friend of yours, saying, say hello to Balozi Kimani. He's a great guy, doing so proud in New York. And a lot of people are watching.
You see, when you get on your show, friends who haven't been in touch with you, now I'm hearing from them.
It's because you did a good job. Well done. We'll see you back here next week, same time, same place, folks. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. Good night. Good luck. God bless Kenya.